I started experimenting with seed starting about 5 years ago. And, you know, there's nothing more rewarding than growing your own plants and vegetables from seed. And it can be a little intimidating at first, and it can get a little kind of crazy and out of control. There's definitely a lot of different varieties, a lot of different plants that you can grow. So, you know, there is a fine line between seed starting and madness. And you're going to want to start small. Get my slideshow to work here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you're going to want to start small. This was my very first raised bed garden. So I had these 3 4-foot by 4-foot boxes. And you can see, you know, in the beginning of the season, it doesn't look like it's going to amount to much. And then by the end of the season, it is jam-packed and you realize, oh man, I kind of planted too many things. But that's the best thing about gardening, is that it's a learning experience and you can change your, you know, your layout every year. You learn, you build upon it every year. So I'm assuming that most of you have a plan for what you want to grow. That is really the first step, is that you want to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want to grow? And then you want to obtain the seed, and you're going to want to learn about the seed packet anatomy. So on a typical seed packet, there's going to be your plant name, the common name, the Latin name, the days to maturity, which is when the plant will either flower, if it's a flower, or produce fruit or vegetable. Days to germination is the amount of days that it typically takes for the seed to kind of break through that potting soil and emerge. The germination rate will sometimes be on a seed packet, and that is the percentage of seeds in that packet that are viable. It'll tell you what the plant needs to grow, how you should care for it. It'll tell you the plant spacing, not only the spacing between the plants, but then also the row spacing. It'll tell you how high the plant will get. It'll tell you the seeding depth. So that's how you want to, the depth of which you sow your seed. And it'll have, again, the growing instructions. Does it require, you know, warm soil to germinate? Is it a cool crop? And then it should have the packed for date. So when the seed was packed. So I figured, let's go through some of the examples of some packets and kind of pick some of these things out. So this is a really easy radish seed packet. So the common name is up here. It's radish early scarlet globe. It tells you the description of the plant and the vegetable that it's going to provide. It has bright scarlet oval roots and a medium top. And then down here is where you get more of your pertinent information. So we talked about the days to germination. So you sow the seed and it's going to take 7 to 10 days to emerge from the soil. The depth to which to sow, they want you to sow it 1/4 inch, so not very deep at all. The seed spacing is 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So that's the space between the actual seeds in the row. And then this is your row spacing, which is 6 to 12 inches in between your rows. And then your days to harvest is 20 to 30. It wants you to sow it in a sunny location so that as soon as the soil can be worked. So that is an indication that this seed can be direct sown in the garden. It's a cool weather crop. So it's letting you know, get it in as soon as the soil can be worked, early spring. Then it's telling you to thin the seedlings. So you're like, well, wait a minute. I had my seed spacing up here is 1/2 inch to 1 inch, but after the seeds have germinated and are 2 inches, and they want you to thin it to a final spacing of 1 to 2 inches apart. So this is where you can kind of play around with seed starting, direct sowing seeds in your garden, especially if you have a raised bed garden or an elevated tabletop garden. You can kind of play with the plant spacing. So, You can somewhat skip this seed spacing. If you want to plan ahead, you would use this final spacing of 1 to 2 inches. So you would take, like, say, your square foot, and you would plan out a radish every 1 to 2 inches, and you would put in maybe 2 or 3 seeds per location, and then you might, to guarantee that you're gonna get germination there, and then you would just have to cut out those little seedlings. So it just depends on how you want to do it. You can either sow the whole row and thin out from there, or you can sow with the final spacing. And then it's going to tell you to keep the soil moist. Lack of moisture will cause hot flavor and woody texture. So that's really important because that's going to affect your final product. So this is a really super easy seed packet. Down here, it's a little dark, but it has the packed for 20 sell by 12/20. So that's the sell by date. So that's also good to note. A lot of seeds you can store them, but they do have a shelf life. So you're going to want to pay attention to how old your seeds are. And then of course it has the little zone over here. So we're like, you know, kind of over here in the April to July zone. So let's take a look at a pepper. So this is a basic pepper packet that you can get like at the home garden store. Again, you've got your packed by date is 2018. Yes, I'm still sowing these and they did germinate. This is a California Wonder green bell pepper. It's easy to grow from seed. It has a little description. The fruits are going to be medium size, 4 to 6 inches. And then it has a tip that this pepper can be grown in a container. Again, it gives you the same instructions. Your planting depth is 1/4 inch. You're going to thin to 18 to 2 feet between your peppers in a row. It wants full sun. It's going to get 18 to 24 inches high. And it's going to take about 75 days to produce that pepper. And then here is a little note, direct sow. So if you wanted to direct sow it, you would have to do it after the danger of frost. So this is telling you peppers like warm weather, they germinate in warm soil. Don't know as if we'd have enough time to direct sow your peppers and get 75 days. It would be cutting it pretty close. So then if you want to start indoors and get a jump start, you're going to look at 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. I typically go with Memorial Day. That's usually my go-to. Some years we're lucky and you can kind of get things out a little sooner. This year, it's looking like no, maybe not. And then the packed for is down here too, but it's also at the top. So this is a pretty basic, you know, it gives you the pertinent information, what you need to know. Here's a different style packet. This is from Harris Seeds. So these I ordered through Harris Seeds, and it just has a different look. It tells you the packet weight. There's approximately 45 seeds. The commercial packets at like Home Depot and stuff, they usually don't tell you how many seeds are in there, but it's kind of like, it's slim, you know. So this is 45 seeds, pretty basic seeding time, early spring, gives you the depth. This one gives you the soil temperature. So these are jalapenos and they want the soil temperature to be 75 to 80 degrees to germinate. So that's key. Days to germination, 10 to 20. Weeks to transplanting. So that's a different way of saying start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. And then your transplant spacing is 15 inches in between by 2 feet in a row. So it's 75 days from transplant. So note that again too. It's not gonna set fruit until 75 days after you transplant it. So then you need to add on that 6 to 8 weeks that you spent caring for it inside, and then the 10 days that you waited for it to germinate. It sows approximately 35 plants, even though there's 45 seeds. Use sterile starter mix and transplant to a warm garden. So peppers definitely, they want warm soil. And then this is a treated seed. So it just has a note here, do not use it for food. This is a really intense seed packet. So I just wanted to show you the levels of seed packets and what you might come across so that you're familiar with it. This is a cucumber seed packet from Johnny's Select Seeds. They provide you with a lot of information. So you've got all your specs here, the direct seeding rate, there's 30 seeds, 15 feet, 100 seeds will do 50 feet, 250 seeds will do 125 feet, and so on. This was like a smaller pack. This was like the 30 seeds. So it tells you what the cucumbers require. They need fertile, well-drained soil, gives you the pH. They need constant and adequate irrigation. They're sensitive to cold. And then it gives you the transplant. So you're going to sow indoors. They usually give you like the size cell plug tray that you should use. They get really intense, like keep the temperature above 70 degrees at day and 60 degrees at night. This is more like greenhouse, you know, growing. So you can definitely bring it down to the home gardener level. You're going to work with whatever temperature your soil is in your seed starting area. If you can maintain it, that's great. If not, this is more for greenhouse growers. Direct seed, cucumbers actually prefer to be direct sown, but they do want warm soil, at least 70 degrees. They will not germinate below 50 degrees. Tells you how to sow it, and then you're going to harvest it. That's important too, because sometimes you're growing something that you've never grown before, or you've never necessarily purchased it at the store either. And you're like, well, how do I know when to harvest it? You know, when is the best time? When is it going to be ready? So a lot of times seed packets will tell you that too. When bearing begins, pick daily. Sometimes it'll say, you know, harvest fruits from 3 inches to 5 inches. It also tells you the disease and pests that are attracted to this particular cucumber. And then again, a basic zinnia packet from your home store. It's got, you know, all the same information. It's an annual, the planting depth. You're going to thin to 12 inches. This part, direct sow after danger of frost. Again, it means it wants warm soil. Zinnias don't really like to be transplanted. So if you are going to start it indoors, I would kind of go for the 3 to 4 weeks before last frost, just because they don't really like to be transplanted. Jan, did you want to do any questions on seed pack anatomy?
Yeah, that was rather complicated. Why don't we see if anybody has questions, and they can unmute themselves if they do, or we can also, if they want to save them till the end, that's fine too.
Okay. I don't see anything in the chat.
No, nobody's been putting stuff in the chat, so.
Did you guys have any questions on seed packet anatomy? I think we're good.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, and we'll catch anything at the end.
Okay.
Okay, a quick question, Brandie.
Yeah.
You have trouble keeping the small cells wet when you're sowing seeds in the small packets, and those, you know, the real small cells?
Yeah, so I've actually transitioned into a lot of soil blocking, but even if I do seed into a small cell, what I typically like to do, even direct sowing outdoors, I like to start with damp soil. So that's basically, I pre-moisten the soil before I even seed, and then I don't have to worry about watering right away after I plant the seed, because a lot of times those small seeds will get displaced when you go to water them after you plant. So that's one of my tricks, is starting with pre-moistened soil. The other trick is to bottom water, and we can talk about that a little bit later on.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's just talk quickly about sowing seeds directly in your garden, because believe it or not, direct sowing in your garden is a form of seed starting. It is, and now's a great time to get in some of those cool weather crops. It is getting a little late in the game to start a lot of your longer growing season plants like tomatoes, peppers. The cutoff for me was 4/25 was the last start date. But now is a good time to direct seed in your garden outside. But you want to consider some things first. Some seeds prefer to be direct sown over transplanted. Like I talked about, cucumbers like to be direct sown, cilantro, beans, sunflowers. You can do lettuces, radishes, beets, carrots. All of those things really like to be direct sown where they're going to live permanently outside. You just need to think about the soil temperature. Like we talked about with the seed packet anatomy, cucumbers really prefer warm soil. Now is not a good time to stick them out there right now. However, radishes, some carrots, they could be a little finicky. Peas love cold weather. So those are things that you can direct sow right now. Sunflowers, I would wait a couple weeks before you direct sow those. The same thing with the zinnias. Sowing depth, it's the same thing as the seed packet. You want to take a look at the sowing depth. If it was only 1/4 inch, you might want to make a furrow. So you're going to take your hoe, or if you're in a raised bed, your hand, and make a little trough in the soil, and then drop your seeds in at the spacing, and then cover them over and give them a little tamp down. Also consider that some seeds do require light to germinate. So if you're direct sowing some flowers outside, like the Dara or the false Queen Anne's lace, it needs light to germinate. The same thing with snapdragons. So if you direct sow those outside, you would just sprinkle them onto the soil and kind of push down the soil to get that soil to seed contact, but you're not going to sow it in. Soil to seed contact is another big one with germinating all seeds. You want to make sure that that seed has good contact with the soil so that it gets the moisture that it needs to germinate. And then when it does germinate, the root is able to make really good, strong contact with that soil. Water, again, is important for direct seeding in your garden. I like to just, water before I even make my furrow or plant anything, because then I don't have to water after I sow the seeds, because I just feel like it makes a mess. I don't have a good nozzle, must be on my hose, and I feel like it disperses the soil everywhere. And then again, if it doesn't rain, you're going to have to help those seeds along and kind of keep them moist until they do germinate. Sometimes they recommend putting like a light layer of row cover over really delicate seeds. So, if you're starting something really delicate out there, you might just want to invest in a roll of row cover and just kind of cut it and then pin it down with some rocks. That will help as well. It also helps with deterring rabbits from nibbling off and birds getting at your freshly sown seeds. So don't think that it's too late to start seeds indoors. There are a few things that you can start. Also try direct sowing outside too. But if you are going to invest in starting indoors, you're going to need some equipment. You're going to need sterile seed starting mix. It is different from potting soil. It's lighter. It holds moisture evenly to keep the seeds moist. It is sterilized, so it's free of any fungus and bacteria. You really want a sterile mix. And then your containers, you can do cell trays, you can do peat pods. I started with peat pods when I first started. I really liked those, in the little net, you soak them and they puff up. The peat pots, the little biodegradable pots, I still transplant them. I pull the roots out, I throw away the pot after. Soil blockers, you could do yogurt cups, but you have to put drainage in the bottom. You see all these super cute things on Pinterest of people starting seeds in eggshells and egg cartons and yogurt cups, but they have to have bottom drainage. Like, you have to have a way for that water to get out of there. You cannot have standing water in your seed starting trays. You might want bottom trays, especially too if you're going to bottom water. That's easier. You're not getting water all over the floor. You're going to need labels. A heat mat is I think the best investment for seed starting. It gives off an ambient heat. So the soil, even though your air temperature is going to be 65 degrees, your soil temperature might be at 50 degrees. So a heat mat is a lifesaver when it comes to seed starting. Lights, a timer, we'll get into the details of that in a little bit, and then a watering mechanism, a watering can, a spray bottle, and of course your seeds from a reputable seed dealer. Okay, so DIY seed starting equipment. You could go nuts and invest, you know, $730 from Gardener Supply, which I don't suggest doing. If you wanted to do it, that's great for this whole setup that holds 288 seeds. Or if you really want to go all out, I would start small first. This is one of those wire shelves from like Home Depot, Lowe's, and the shop lights that they have just hung on each row. This is kind of what I ended up moving up towards, and it's a lot more reasonable. The shelf is like $50, the lights might be $40, and then your bulbs, it's a lot cheaper than almost $800 here. This is another DIY start. This method right here, this little PVC one light holder, that is how I started with seeds, and it worked fantastic. I would highly recommend this, especially if you want like a tabletop, you know, you can set it right on a workbench in the basement. This one is from Maryland, I think, University of Maryland. And so this one is a little bit more compact. I kind of like that it doesn't have the square, because sometimes you get trays that don't fit into this square. So that is a good idea too. I have the links here. I can paste these into the chat when we're done if you guys want to click on those. And get the instructions. They have the step-by-step instructions of how to make each of these. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about lights for a second. So you don't need to spend a fortune on the fancy grow light. Seed starting, you just need the light to get the seeds germinated and to get them off and growing for that 4 to maybe 8 weeks max before you transition them outside. So plants absorb different types of light, and the Kelvin color temperature is kind of where you want to be within when you're buying your fluorescent or LED bulbs. I have not switched to LED yet. I have, I think they're T8 bulbs. They're the skinny bulbs. And what I've heard recently is that the LED bulbs, they don't give off hardly any heat. So I start my seeds in the basement, and that's why I kind of like the fluorescent bulbs, because they do give off more heat and kind of warm up my seed starting area a little bit more. So when the seeds germinate, they need the Kelvin light temperature on this end, this green and blue section, the 65K, that is what stimulates them to grow foliage. The 21K over on the red and the orange scale, that's what triggers them into wanting to bloom. So that's where people growing indoors, probably hydroponics, maybe people who grow like African violets in the winter, that's where you need more of that color spectrum, is if you want something to try to go into bloom inside. We're not trying to do that. We just want to get them established before we take them outside. So I usually get the daylight bulbs. I try to look for the 65K on the box. You can find it. It's typically that daylight is what it's called. Soft white bulbs are 300K, so that's closer to this section. So I think I did switch last year. My lights, I think I have 4 lights across, and every other, one is 65, one is 3,000, one is 65, one is 3,000. So that it is a balance of both, but I have started with just the 65K solely, so that will work for you. And those are readily available in the home stores. So this is my actual setup right now. So I have that wire rack. It's hard to see, but I have a humidity tent over my shelving system this year. Last year I kind of struggled. My basement is kind of cool. It's like 50 to 60 degrees depending, you know, on what the temperature is outside. We don't have heat in our basement. I kind of wish we did. We don't have the ducts that you can put heat into the basement. So this humidity tent has helped me when I first started germinating the seeds. I would keep it closed and let the lights run. Now that everything is kind of up and growing, I open it when the lights are on so that it doesn't get too hot. I also invested in this is a little digital thermometer, and it also has a humidity gauge. It was cheap. It was like 12 bucks off of Amazon. It's magnetic. So I have that in there so I know exactly. I've never really known what the temperature was in the basement. Now I know, and that's super helpful. So I have everything hooked on power strips. I have 2 different power strips. One is for the heat mats. When I'm germinating the seeds, I keep the heat mats going constantly. They're plugged in 24/7. I also keep this fan plugged in 24/7. That's on the bottom shelf. I don't have one that oscillates right now. I wish I did, but that one's just standing, and it just keeps a little air circulating constantly in my little you know, grow hut here. These marigolds, seed starting is all about timing. These I started way too early. I had to pot them up because they're so big. The same thing with this bunny tail grass. It got huge. The other surge protector has the timer, and you want the lights to run for 16 hours, but then you want them to be off for 8 hours, because once your plants germinate, they need that dark time. They need that to like refuel themselves and just like chill out, and then they go back with the lights on. I have it set up so my lights run at night because our heat, you know, is lower at night. So I figured, it kind of keeps them warmer at night. So my lights run from 5:30 p.m. to about 8:30 a.m. and then they're off during the day. So I have 15 steps for spectacular seedlings that I'm going to run through, and then we'll go and we'll talk about questions. So I'm going to minimize this because I can't see my steps here. You're going to gather all of your supplies, and it helps to make a plan. I have a sheet from Johnny's Select Seeds. They have a wonderful spreadsheet that you can input your last frost date. I used Memorial Day. And then you can, they have like all of the seeds available on their website that they sell. So I picked what I'm starting, and it gives you the crop name, the that you should start the seed before transplanting. So then it gives you the exact date. I'm going to give you an example. My tomatoes were 6 to 8 weeks before transplanting. The earliest start date was April 4th. The last start date was April 25th. A safe time to put them out is 1 to 2 weeks after May 30th to June 6th. And then I have notes as if whether or not the seed needs to be covered to germinate, if it needs dark to germinate, or if it needs light to germinate. A super quick one was Amaranthus. It's a ornamental cut flower filler that I use. That one only needs 4 to 6 weeks. I started it inside April 18th. I could still have started more May 2nd, and they are up and growing. And I barely cover the seed on that one. So this helps to get it all organized, you know, what you're growing, what it needs before you even start. Then you're gonna get your potting soil. You're going sterilized. You're gonna mix it with lukewarm water until it's damp. You're gonna fill your seed trays or whatever containers you decide to use, tamp it down. Don't wanna pack it down, but you wanna tamp it down to get rid of those air pockets. And then you're also going to want make your labels. So I put the variety that I'm sowing, the date that I'm sowing, and any little notes that I want to know. Like say it was super old seed, I'll put that on there so that I don't get discouraged if none of it germinates. You're going to want to indent a little pocket when you're sowing the seed. You can use your finger, you can use called a dibbler. That's specifically made for seed sowing. You can use a pencil. And then you're gonna get to the magic finally moment of dropping 1 or 2 seeds into each of those cells. A nifty trick for when you're sowing super small seeds like snapdragons is to use a toothpick and just put a little spit on it, and then you dip the toothpick in your seeds and they jump right onto the toothpick, and then you can transport them right onto your moist soil. Then you're gonna want to cover the seeds if they need covering and just give them a firm, gentle little press to get that seed to soil contact. If they need light to germinate, I usually try to get that soil contact when I'm actually setting the seed on the soil. I try to push it when I'm setting it. And then I also put vermiculite, fine layer of vermiculite on top of the seeds that need light to germinate. I feel like it helps set them into place. Okay. You're gonna set your trays directly on your heat mat or in a warm spot. A consistent 65 degrees is best. You can use a humidity dome if you want to help maintain the moisture of your seeds until they germinate. I actually didn't use it much this year. I just made sure that my soil was consistently moist. The thing with using a heat mat is that your soil does dry out a little faster, but if you're gonna use a humidity dome, just as soon as you see that first seed sprout and break through the soil, take the dome off, because it'll lead to too much moisture and you'll end up with the possibility of getting dampen off, which is a fungal disease. So moisture is key to germination. So if you're not using a dome, I would just check the soil daily. You have to check your seeds daily. You have to babysit them. I actually check mine twice a day just to make sure everything is good, because once they're gone, it's hard to bring them back. If you forget to water a day, they'll be toast. So I check mine in the morning and then I check them at night. And I like to use a spray bottle to just control the moisture. When I'm germinating the seed, I just use a spray bottle and spray the top of my cells or my soil blocks. And I feel that really, really helped this year. Lights, you want to keep the lights 4 to 10 inches above the seedlings. So you don't want leggy plants. You don't want them stretching for the light. So when you are waiting for the seeds to germinate, you can have them a little higher up, but as soon as those seeds come through the soil, you want to put the lights, an inch above the top of the plants. And then you're going to have to continue to adjust that light as the plant grows taller. They need 16 hours of light a day, but then they also do need that 8 hours of dark to rest and recoup. And so when you're starting a bunch of different seeds, pay attention to your heights, your germination time. I'm really bad. I start a bunch of different things on the same tray and things germinate at different rates. And so once they germinate, you don't want them on that heat mat. So kind of pay attention to, okay, this one has 10 to 15 days of germination. That one has 10 to 15 days. I can combine these into a tray together if I want. And the same thing, how fast are they gonna grow? You saw my one photo, my light was like crooked because I had really short seedlings over here and really tall seedlings over here. My mouse, here you are. Okay, thinning is essential. I usually pop in 1 to 2, I usually do 2 seeds per cell, just because I want to guarantee that I have as close to 100% germination as possible. And a lot of times you'll get 2 seeds that sprout. So you need to thin out those second seedlings, just kind of, I know it's like torture, I hate doing it, but whatever one is stronger, I have a little tiny pair of like sewing snips, and I just snip out the weakest seedling and toss it, because you want just 1 plant per cell. You're gonna pot up your seedlings as they outgrow their cells. So you'll start to notice that they're getting taller, like my marigolds, they were getting too big. They were shading out seeds next to them or seedlings next to them. And I was like, you guys need more space. You're going to provide good air circulation that helps prevent dampening off. Sterile potting mix and air circulation are your best bets for preventing dampening off. Fertilize after 3 weeks with a diluted fertilizer. So after your plants have germinated, your seeds have germinated, you have little seedlings, 3 weeks go by, you can start fertilizing. If you have something like a Miracle Grow or a plant food, you just want to dilute it in half. So whatever the package says to make a regular gallon, use half the amount, unless you're buying something specifically for seedlings, because you'll burn their roots and they'll be damaged. You don't want to stress them out. So you're going to harden off your seedlings. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. And then you're going to water your seedlings right before you transplant them into the garden. It gives them a little extra moisture. Their roots are ready to go. And then you're going to transplant on a cloudy day or in the early evening so they don't get totally shocked. And it helps prevent transplant shock. So let me go on to the next slide here and we'll talk about hardening off, because that is the most important step of seed starting. So you took all the time, you checked your seeds every single day, you watered them, you babied them, you fed them, and now you're ready to take them and put them out into the world, and you can't just throw them out there. They've been living in a nice, comfy, cozy environment. It's been stable. There's been no ups and downs. So you have to slowly wean them off into the real world. So you're going to want to find a spot that gets a couple hours of sun, maybe in the morning, maybe in the afternoon, and set them out. It usually takes about 5 to 7 days to harden off your seedlings. So start them out slow, let them get a couple hours of, maybe even filtered light. If you've got a tree that leaves out and you can give them some filtered light for a couple hours. Watch the nighttime temperatures. If it gets below 50 degrees, bring them inside the garage or the porch, closed porch, take them back out. It's a total pain in the butt. Hardening off is the most important step, but it's also the most annoying step. And then you build them up. Then after 2 days of a couple hours, you put them in maybe half the day. They're in direct sunlight. And then as the next day, another half a day, and then getting closer to a full day so that they don't get sunburned and totally shocked, and they're used to the wind moving them, and maybe it rains a little bit. It also, if you have them in cells, like these cells, you want to make sure that they stay moist, but you kind of want to let them dry out a little bit, because they're going to dry out in the garden if it doesn't rain. So you're getting them used to living outside where they're not going to be moist all the time. They're going to feel wind, they're going to feel rain, and they're going to get sun. So that is hardening off in a nutshell there. These are my little transplants, and this is what they turned into. So it's totally rewarding. I think seed starting is just, it's one of the best. You get a really good feeling at the end of the season, especially if you're growing vegetables or flowers and you get to harvest and enjoy. I can a lot of produce, and so in the winter, you're just like, yes, I'm ready to start my seeds and get going again. Okay. So don't get down on yourself if you make mistakes. I've killed a lot of seedlings. It's okay. It's gonna happen. Take notes. I have a garden journal, so I write down, my mistakes, what I want to change, what I would do differently. You're not going to remember. You're not going to remember next year what you wanted to change. So write it down, and then just do a lot of reading. Learn, read, ask questions. You're going to learn some more. And it's okay to ask other gardeners questions and see what they do. They might do something totally different, something that you would be like, I don't think that works, but you could try it and see if it works. Experiment and enjoy the process and the fruits of your labor. So my resource for this presentation was the Rise and Shine Seed Starting with It is from Petra Page Mann. She's of Fruition Seeds in out near, I think, Geneva. And she has an online seed school that is really helpful too. There's like hours of footage. So that was my resource for this presentation. And then if you do have questions, you can always email our Master Gardeners. This is our email address here. And if you want more information about the helpline or gardening classes that are coming up, this is our Cooperative Extension website here. And I guess we'll stop and take some questions.
That was great, Brandie. Thank you.
No problem.
Fruition Seeds is in Naples.
Naples. I couldn't remember where it was. Naples. Okay.
Yeah. So we did have a question earlier. Let me see where it was about seed storage, storing your packets. How do you store packets that you don't use all the seeds from?
Some people store them in the refrigerator. Even the freezer. I don't store, the only seeds that I keep in my refrigerator are snapdragon seeds. I love to start snapdragons and certain seeds, once you get into the groove, you'll learn like bells of Ireland, snapdragons. They like to be exposed to that cold and you'll get a better germination rate if you expose them to that cold and then sow them. So I always tend to have a packet of snapdragons in my refrigerator, but you want to store your seeds in a dry, cool, and dark location. You would actually be surprised. I use my pantry, my kitchen pantry closet. It backs up to our garage and it's deep. So it tends to, kind of stay a consistent temperature. It's dark in there. I kind of tuck them in the back corner. And you would be surprised at the longevity that some seeds have. And Petra does have a seed storage, like onion seeds, you can't keep them. They are only good for 1 year. Tomatoes, I think they're good for 3 to 5. Peppers, I think, are 3 to 5. I don't know as if she has it in this book, but dry, cool, and dark are your key components there.
And I did put in the chat, I found a quick one from one of the extensions. I think it's University of Minnesota. So I did put that in the chat. It's Planting and Growing Guide, Saving Vegetable Seeds.
Okay, super. Yeah, because I don't know. She talks about it in her seed starting. I subscribe to her emails, and I just like watched one of her little mini videos, and she said storing them in the kitchen cabinet, you'd be surprised that as long as they're in like an airtight container, how long they'll keep.
Another question from Karen. Have you tried harvesting seeds from your vegetables and using them for seed starting the next year?
If you are going to try that, you need to make sure that you are starting heirloom seeds. Heirloom vegetables will be true to seed. So when you harvest those seeds and you plant them the next year, you're going to get the same plant. It's going to fruit the same. I grow a lot of hybrid seeds. So they're a cross of different parents, and they will not produce seed that is true to the parent plant. It'll be some other combination. So I would like to get more into seed saving and storing. I might try with some celotias this year. I just have to make sure if they're hybrids or not. But I know for sure if you're gonna save seed, I think that's like a whole other topic. I think with tomatoes, you have to, I think you have to wash them and let them dry, and that's a whole other process, but it's gotta be an heirloom seed.
Yeah, heirloom or open pollinated.
Yes,
so anything that says hybrid on your packet, don't bother.
Or like if it says like F1.
F1.
Yeah.
Just a quick recap on hardening off. How many days do you typically take to harden off your transplants?
I try to take at least a week. Sometimes a really bad plant mom, and I leave them in there on the porch suffering for 2 weeks, which is not good either. Timing is crucial. You want your seedlings to have zero stress. You want them to just keep, from the time they germinate to the time you get them in the garden, you want them to have no stress. You want to pot them up as they're growing so that they have no stops in their growth. You want it to be a smooth transition. So I would take, that's why you don't want to start your seeds too soon, because if your garden isn't ready for them, then they're going to be stuck in these little cells for too long. They're going to get root bound. So I would do 5 days minimum, 7 to 10 days max for hardening off.
All right, and a general question, Christine, I don't know what we have recorded this PowerPoint. We are working on trying to figure out where we can post them so they'll be available. And I think if we did the PowerPoint as a PDF, it might be too large to email, but maybe we can work on something. We do have a lot of resources on seed starting and vegetable growing on our website. So maybe we can even come up with Brandie's list of 15 things and do some kind of fact sheet.
I'm going to post those links into the chat of the PVC.
Yes, the do-it-yourselves. Any other questions? You can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. I think this was good. Especially we can, still do a lot of direct sowing. We haven't really even started direct sowing season. So any more questions for Brandie? Anybody have a chat or want to unmute? Yeah, lots of thank yous. We did have a little discussion on sowing peas in the garden already. So peas are a cool crop. So yeah, usually once your soil is workable, you can put peas in the garden.
Yes, they planted peas commercially behind our house yesterday. So it is time for peas. I already have, I have some lettuce going. I have some radishes going that don't look too hot. I think I don't know, the weather, I think just got to them. Carrots, spinach. Spinach will not germinate in warm weather unless it's like an Asian variety.
What about kale? Is kale a cool crop? I think it is.
I think kale is a cool crop. And then I know a lot of people, it's a cool crop, but a lot of people don't harvest it. I think you harvest it up until the summer and then you let it go through the summer and then let it get frosted and harvest it after it gets frosted because it gets sweeter. It's one of those ones that
it needs a little cold weather.
Yeah.
Tips for keeping deer away from your garden.
A fence.
Yours is fenced, right?
I have a fence. We don't have, we're on the edge of a village. We have open agricultural fields around us, but there's no woods. We're not in like a deer, you'll see them in passing, but we're not in like a deer congregation area. We also have a dog. But I do have a fence. I have a regular, I think it's a 4-foot fence around. I would do if you have just a raised bed, get some stakes. And I know it's a total pain in the butt, but get the deer netting from Country Max and just drape, make a little fence tent to try to protect it.
Yeah, deer are probably the hardest thing to deal with. I mean, a fence is honestly, for a vegetable garden, your best bet, even to keep out woodchucks and rabbits. You can try the animal repellents, but you have to spray that on your plants, and you may not, some of them probably say you can't spray them on vegetables. So deer are tough. So a fence is probably the best thing. We did have a question come in, and I meant to talk about our seed library at the CCE office. We do have seeds available that are free. If people are looking for a place to pick up seeds, we have a wide variety of them. If you are starting seeds and you have some left over and you don't know what to do with them, you can drop them off at our donation box at the seed library. It's on the back porch of our extension office. We're at 420 East Main Street. Anything else coming? I don't have anything on the schedule yet, Christine. We're working on getting some more programs coming up. So we would put them on our Facebook page. And also our website. We have an events section on our website. So anything we get going will be on that. If people have ideas or thoughts of what they would like to see, you can put that in the chat box too. And hopefully that'll give us some ideas of what people are interested in viewing. So let me see, any other questions? Oh, Lisa has a sunroom, which typically warms up in April. Would that be a good area to start indoor seeds?
You could try it and see if, you know, you would probably still need a grow light unless it's like, you know, sometimes even in a south facing room, if you notice the seedlings starting to like grow towards the light, you might still need a light to get even and really strong seedlings. And then as far as germination, you would probably, if it's an unheated sunroom, I would still, even if it was a heated sunroom, I think I would still use a heat mat just to get the best soil temperature for your seeds to germinate. You know, tomatoes, they want 75-degree soil to germinate. So you could just try it and see.
Oh, here's a good tip. One of our participants, they use hog panels for protection from the deer that they get from Tractor Supply. So anything you can make a fence of. I know I have some more kind of decorative type fencing to keep them out of certain areas, but yeah, the hog panels would be a heavy duty solution. So I think people get creative to keep deer out.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I don't have to battle with them.
Yeah. Any other questions for Brandie before we sign off? Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
We had a nice group of people. And as I said, as we come up with more classes, we'll be posting them on our Facebook page.